It's Thursday, the 9th of March, 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories, 5 minutes. Let's jump straight into it. Story number 1, Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe yesterday said he is closer to pausing further interest rate rises, acknowledging the difficulties that higher rates are, of course, causing households, particularly since mortgage repayments, Sean, are set to take up a record share of wages.
The day after the Reserve Bank delivered a 10th successive rate hike, this time 25 basis points, Lowe yesterday said the board deliberated about the pain the 3.5 percentage point increase in rates over the past 10 or 11 months is causing households. He said monetary policy is now in restrictive territory, which means it's dragging on the economy, and the board agrees the central bank is now closer to the point where it will be appropriate to pause interest rate increases. The government said mortgage repayments are likely to consume a record 9.5% of household disposable income later this year. Now, the Reserve Bank hopes to get inflation back to 3% by 2025, and Lowe says unemployment can remain around 5%, adding that the post-pandemic boom has run its course. He said Australia is finally starting to see the first signs of a slower rate of inflation, nominating clothing and household furnishings as examples, and is keen to boost productivity across the country. Now, a lot of the economic stuff he talked about yesterday wasn't really new, or it wasn't very different from the day before. But the fact he was so open about the need to end the rate cycle is significant. He was talking at the Financial Review Business Summit. He also talked about the Reserve Bank Board taking its job incredibly seriously, and he said there's a long way to go on central bank digital currencies.
Sean, story number 2, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese headed off to India yesterday afternoon, leading a delegation including some prominent business CEOs and university vice-chancellors.
The trip is aimed at strengthening the economic and security relationship between the two countries. It's the first Australian prime ministerial visit to India in more than 5 years, and Albanese will meet his counterpart Narendra Modi for the annual Leaders Summit. There's a bunch of university vice-chancellors going, including Deakin University's Ian Martin, who will formally announce that Deakin will become the first foreign university in the world to be approved to establish a branch campus in India. Other attendees include Qantas boss Alan Joyce, Wesfarmers Rob Scott, Commonwealth Bank's Matt Comyn, and ANZ Chief Executive Shane Elliott. Now, Albanese earlier in the week said he has visited China back in 1991 as a backpacker. He said he caught buses, hitched rides and boarded trains. I'm sure this will be somewhat different.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit. Sean, story number 3, this one I'm sure will be of interest for any white-collar workers out there. The Finance Sector Union has launched a major test case on excessive hours. This is against National Australia Bank on behalf of managers who allegedly had to work between 55 and 80-hour weeks.
The union launched the federal court action yesterday on behalf of 4 managers who claimed they had to work unreasonable unpaid hours over several years, and they're demanding compensation for damages to their health and family life. Now, the case is expected to test for the first time what reasonable additional hours are for white-collar workers. And of course, that'll have big ramifications, not just for National Australia Bank, but senior staff at other big banks and professions across the country. The issue of excessive hours has become a very hot topic in employment law. The Finance Sector Union is keen to have the court set a benchmark for the financial sector so as to stop it from exploiting staff through excessive unpaid hours.
Sean, story number 4. How about this one? The coal companies, right? The price of the commodity has tumbled 60% since September last year. And the local coal companies, things like Whitehaven and New Hope, have gone from best performing to some of the worst performers.
Last year, those two companies were among the top performers of the ASX 200. Since its December peak just before Christmas, Whitehaven is down 35%. New Hope peaked in October. Since then, it's down 27%. The other third big player, Yancoal, is a bit different. Its share price is about where it was just before Christmas, but it's got a major shareholder. It's also listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, just a bit different. Coal prices are now back to levels last seen before Russia invaded Ukraine. Mostly it's because a record warm winter in Europe means demand for energy globally, including gas and coal, is much lower than expected. That's pushed prices lower. So too the share prices of Whitehaven and New Hope.
Finally, story number 5, Sean. The saying goes, of course, that money can't buy happiness. And I think many of us have suspected for some time that is not, in fact, true.
It does buy happiness, and you get happier as you get richer, according to a major new study. Well, at least up until you hit the $500,000 range, which is about 900,000 Aussie. A team of scientists, including the Nobel Prize-winning psychologist who introduced the idea of a happiness plateau more than a decade ago, have found that contentedness does increase steadily in line with incomes. In fact, it accelerates once you get paid more than $100,000 a year. Now, the only catch is that the person must enjoy a certain baseline level of happiness to begin with. Apparently, 20% of the population don't have that. The study of 33,000 plus people living in the US contradicts a famous 2010 paper by the psychologist Daniel Kahneman and economist Angus Deaton, which reported that happiness goes up with income only to a point. Kahneman now has rethought that one. He reckons money does make you happier.
I reckon he's right. I mean, from my limited experience, I'd be happier with money.
I think so. I mean, it's sort of aspirational for me as opposed to lived experience, but yeah, I think so.
All right, well, I think we can agree on that one then, Sean. There we go, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 9th of March, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't long enough for you, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.